Welcome. Good morning, afternoonish. Welcome. You have found your way to the 2026 CAP Month, the Child Abuse Prevention Month webinar series. We're going to get started here in just about 2 minutes, but we're giving folks a chance to find that Zoom link and make their way in here. I want to welcome you. My name is Jessica Matley. I'm representing CalTrin. I'm going to be your host today and have some information to share with you in just a few minutes. In the meantime, since we're here, we're all hanging out, we have an icebreaker for you. I thought I would ask. So this fourth session is all about concrete support, right? And we know concrete support as a protective factor is about helping meet real immediate needs for families so that they're not stuck in survival mode and can actually focus on thriving. So I wanted to ask you, since concrete support in our day-to-day life sometimes includes the friends that we need to just pick up and call. Sometimes you just need somebody to talk to on the other end of that line. My icebreaker today is, what song reminds you of friendship or someone that has your back? What song, when you hear it, reminds you of friendship or someone that has your back? Tell me in the chat. Thank you, Casey. Oh, you are my sunshine. Oh, the theme song from Friends. Yes. You've got a friend in me. I love that. Lean on me. We are family. Love that. Flash dance. Yes, Brittany. Let's see. What else? The Friends theme. Yeah, Leticia. hmm That's what friends are for. Carnival. Maria. Can we be friends? I love that. I love this. The Girl Scouts. Yeah, I like the song. It was the theme song to the Wonder Years. I believe it was Joe Crocker. Um, Somebody's going to figure this out for me. Have a little help from my friends. Thank you, Timothy. That's it. The Beatles song. Yes, you're right. Yeah, it's like Bob Dylan. He's written every song you've ever heard. You just didn't know he did. Yeah, Drag Pack by 21 Pilots. I love this. So for everyone joining, hi, welcome. You have found your way to the 2026 Child Abuse Prevention Month webinar series. We're going to dive right in. If you're seeing some, we are the world. I love that. If you're seeing some fun things in the chat, just so you know, we asked an icebreaker question since we're going to be talking about concrete support today. Is what is a song that reminds you of friendship? And there's a lot of things I'm going to be adding to my playlist. Umbrella by Rihanna. I can't believe I didn't see that one in there. On this next slide, I just want to give you a little bit of information of what you can expect today. You are watching the OCAP 2026 Child Abuse Prevention Month webinar series. We are in our fourth webinar. If you would advance us to the next slide, please. This fourth webinar is about concrete supports in action, which is about meeting family needs to prevent crisis. We're kind of looking at it from a prevention lens here. This session that we're having today examines how concrete supports, maybe it's housing, food, financial assistance, help stabilize families and prevent child welfare involvement. The speakers that you're going to hear from today are going to highlight local examples and demonstrate how meeting basic needs strengthen protective factors and promotes long-term well-being. So, I want to give you a little bit of what you can expect today. My name is Jessica Matley. I'm representing CalTrin, and I'm going to be your host today. So I just want to give you some pre-flight checklists of what you can expect. And I am just curious to know, since we are on the fourth webinar series, if you have been to any of the other webinars, tell me in the chat. Have you been to one, two, or all three of them? Just let me know. Elizabeth, the Golden Girls theme song. I probably sing it to myself once a day. I love that. Great. So I see some people have been to all three sessions. Some have been to one. Great. Some have been to two. So this would be my recommendation. If you happen to have missed any and you want to be caught up on what you missed, we have created a YouTube playlist to encompass all of the sessions in one place. You'll see that is dropped in the chat now. So we'll make sure to include that again at the end, but there's the YouTube playlist if you need it. Couple things to know on this next slide. I want to give you some quick housekeeping of what we can expect. We do have some note-taking slides that will be dropping throughout the session, especially in the concrete supports that's coming up. But for now, what we have for you is an action sheet. So you're going to find a couple things. You'll find some note-taking slides in the chat. You're also going to find an action sheet. Now, that action sheet was designed to help you keep track of key takeaways that you're hearing today and hearing throughout the session or the series. So you'll find that in there. Some other things to know, this presentation is being recorded. A copy of this recording will be placed on the YouTube playlist, but we're also going to email it out to anyone that has registered to be here. We will have some interactive components today. One of our favorite and easiest interactions when our speakers are presenting, of course, is the reactions at the bottom of your screen. Those reactions provide a virtual encouragement, and we always recommend that you use them throughout, especially as we welcome the guests to the screen. Thank you. See, thank you. I see some people are demonstrating right now. I love that. We will also have a Q&A pod. So if you have questions for our speakers throughout the sessions, please make sure to ask those questions in the Q&A pod. That's just a great place for us to keep them all in one place. Now, you might see on there that there is a notice, external AI assistants are not allowed in CalTrin trainings due to a California privacy law, which means if you have any fireflies or AI note takers, we're going to escort them to the exit and they can wait for you outside. Don't you worry, we're going to send you a recording so you won't miss a thing. And of course, at the completion of this session, we will send you a completion certificate after a brief survey. All of that will be waiting for us at the end of the webinar. No need to memorize that now. All right, with that, I'd like to explore a little bit about what you can expect in this session on our next slide. A couple things to know. We're going to have an overview, a brief overview of concrete supports as a protective factor. I'm honored to say my colleague Casey White will be leading us through that in just a few minutes. We'll be hearing about family resource centers and concrete supports. We'll discuss concrete supports with a panel and have a discussion. We're very excited with our panelists that are joining us today. And we may have an activity. That activity, if we don't get to it today, just know we will send it home for you with you as homework. But it is intended to help really solidify this idea of concrete support and what it might look like living on a budget, the difficult decisions that families that you interact with are making every day. So we'll get there when we get there. I want to give you just a little reminder of this series in general. So this webinar series, this 2026 Child Abuse Prevention Month webinar series was thoughtfully planned just for you by the Office of Child Abuse Prevention, we know them as OCAP, the Child Abuse Prevention Center, the California Training Institute, that would be CalTrin, and Safe and Sound. Every Wednesday throughout this month of April, we invite you to join us for a different discussion, a session, if you will, to learn how to incorporate this year's theme into statewide prevention initiatives. And this year's theme is Strong Families, Safe Futures. When we care together, families thrive. You're currently looking at the schedule here. We are on April 22nd, which is the fourth iteration. That's the concrete supports. But we invite you to come back next week, next Wednesday, same place, same time, for April 29th, self-care tools for high-impact care teams. If you want to register for that information, you can find that dropped into the chat now. On the CalTrin website, all of the different webinar series are on there, where to find our playlist, how to register for the next one. Make sure to check that out. With that, I'd like to welcome our first speaker, if you will, who's also going to co-lead this panel discussion that's happening in this session today. But I'd love to introduce to the virtual stage Hillary Conrad, who is the Bureau Chief within the Office of Child Abuse Prevention, OCAP, of the California Department of Social Services. So I'd love for you to invite a warm welcome to Hillary. You could do that with your reactions. Thank you. I see you using those reactions, those emojis. Oh, look at you. So proficient. Hi, Hillary. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks, Jess. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. We're glad you're here, and we appreciate your continued engagement and dedication throughout the series. As Jess mentioned, this year our theme is Strong Families, Safe Futures, And it reminds us that when families have the strength, stability, and support they need, children are more likely to grow up safe, healthy, and thriving. Each session in this series has explored a different way we can move towards achieving that vision. As Jess also mentioned, we are focusing on concrete supports in this series, and it is a critical piece of the foundation for families. Concrete supports are the tangible, practical resources that help families meet their basic needs and manage everyday challenges. Things like safe housing, reliable transportation, access to nutritious food, quality childcare, and financial assistance. While these supports may seem straightforward, their impact is profound. When families don't have to worry about how they'll pay the rent, get to work, or put food on the table, they have more capacity to nurture their children, manage stress, and build positive, stable relationships. In many ways, concrete supports are prevention in action. They help reduce the pressures that can lead to crisis and create pathways for families to remain strong, connected, and resilient. They also reflect a broader commitment, one that goes beyond individual services to ensuring that communities are equipped to respond to families with dignity, accessibility, and care. When families have consistent access to what they need, stress is reduced, resilience is strengthened, and the risk of crisis decreases. On the other hand, when those basic needs go unmet, even the strongest families can struggle under the weight of uncertainty and pressure. That's why concrete supports are such a critical part of any prevention strategy. They help create stability so that families can focus on what matters most, caring for their children and building a positive future. As we move through today's session, we will explore how concrete supports fit into a broader prevention framework, what it looks like to connect families to these resources effectively, and how we can all play a role in removing barriers and increasing access. Thank you for being here, for your partnership, and for your commitment to building strong families and safe futures. And with that, to kick us off this morning, I want to introduce Casey White. She is a training coordinator with the California Training Institute. She's focused on equipping professionals with practical tools to better support children and families, and she brings experience in child abuse advocacy and prevention and a strong focus on connecting training to real-world practice. So welcome, Casey.
Thank you.
Let's warm welcome for Casey and kick us off.
Yeah. Thank you, Hillary. I definitely want to highlight a few things that Hillary mentioned today, that when we're talking about concrete supports for families, especially as a protective factor, we have to understand that these families are going through adversity in their lives. And so protective factors was created through the Center CSSP. So what is the Strengthening Families Protective Factors framework? Let's dive into it. So just as Hillary mentioned, we have families in our communities who are experiencing adversity. And sometimes through this adversity that may look different with what they're experiencing. But for CSSP, which is the Center for Study of Social Policy, that's a mouthful. I always stumble on it. So moving forward, I typically refer to it as CSSP while we're here in this space today. So they came up with a study in 2001. They really looked at families in our communities that were struggling, that had maybe experienced child abuse and maltreatment and neglect in our communities. Maybe they've experienced it before, or maybe they stopped it from happening, or maybe they've prevented it from happening at all in their community, in their family. So CSSP said, we want to learn more about what these families are doing right to prevent the child abuse and maltreatment from happening within their family. What have they built into their family network and system to make this happen? So they designed the study to be done and done all the research, and through all of that, they found these 5 protective factors. So that's where the protective factors came from. If you've heard of the protective factors before, if you'll put that for me in the chat, I would love to know. If you've heard of it before, maybe you're an expert, maybe you've attended one of our CalTrin Protective Factors series trainings before, I would love to know that. Great, awesome. So we have some people who have heard of the 5 protective factors. So I hope that you know where they came from, but this is why they exist. They provide everyday strategies to help families build protective factors. We're going to look at these 5 protective factors here in just a second, and encourage It encourages variety of helping professionals like us doing the work every day to work with families in a strength-based way, because we do have to make sure we're shifting our mindset and our lens to be a strength-based one when we're helping families in our communities. So let's take a look at what the 5 protective factors are that this research found. So we have here are the 5 protective factors, and for today's sake, we're going to be focusing on concrete support, right? So we have parental resilience, social connections, knowledge of parenting and child development, concrete support, and social and emotional competence of children. I do want to highlight that originally in 2001, when this research was done by CSSP, Concrete Support's full title, or full name as I like to say, was Concrete Support in Times of Need. So in 2024, CSSP decided to do a little overhaul. And they said, times have changed, society has changed. We need to make sure that our information is up to date, right? We're not currently living in the same type of world that we were in 2001, which I appreciate them going in and saying, let's look at this. What can we change? So they took out the in times of need part of the title for concrete support. Why? Because we need concrete support all the time, not just in times of need, right? So we see these families who are coming into our organizations, and really protective factors are meant to be preventative of child abuse from happening, right? So let's build in these concrete supports before something happens to help them handle adversity before something happens, right? So let's dive into what the definition of concrete support is. So concrete support as a protective factor is identifying, accessing, advocating for, and receiving high quality and equitable support, including basic necessities everyone deserves and specialized services to address specific needs. So before we go any further, I would like you to take a moment and reflect on your own work. When it comes to providing concrete support and helping families access what they need, advocating alongside them, and connecting them to resources, where do you feel that you are right now? So, on a scale from 1 to 5, if you'll put that in the chat for me, just so I can get a better idea of where you feel like your organization is right now. And I want to make sure that I make a note that in today's world, we're handling a lot of different, with administration, we're handling lots of different things that are coming down that are kind of limiting our ability to be able to offer resources to our families. And that can be an adversity and challenge that you're facing in your organization as well. Okay, so I see some 3s, some 4s, some 5s. And if you're a 5, I would love to see it. I always love to see people succeeding. I definitely want to challenge you today in your thinking and see if there's anything that I can add to your list to be able to challenge you to be consistent in your work and keep that 5. Okay, see lots of 3s, 4s. Perfect. This is wonderful. So, there's no right or wrong answer, of course, when it comes to rating yourself. It's just thinking about your day-to-day interactions and your systems, your partnerships with different organizations in your community. And so wherever you landed on that scale, this is where your work begins. Concrete support isn't just about what we know, it's about what we do consistently and intentionally. So now we're going to shift from reflection on how we feel like we're rating ourselves into walking through the 3 key ways that we can strengthen families and how we can provide concrete support. And then we'll connect that with CSSP's logic model. So CSSP says, here's the research we've done. Here's the 5 protective factors. Now, what do we do with them? So they created everyday actions for you to implement. Now, this Strengthening Families framework is an evidence-informed framework. So this is really meant to be implemented into your already existing organization and meant to be moldable to what your community needs. So although these are the 3 everyday actions that CSSP came up with, I encourage you to come up with some of your own. What are some things that you specifically want within your organization? So the everyday actions are, let me go forward a little bit. Responding immediately when families are in crisis. 2, provide information and connection to other services in the community. And 3, help families to develop skills and tools they need to identify their needs and connect to supports. And that is a really big action item that I want to encourage all of you to do, because the purpose of protective factors and being a solid concrete support in someone's life is helping them to identify their own needs. We want to give them autonomy into asking how they can help their family. How can they take control and feel empowered as a caregiver to make decisions for their family? And that's really what we want to get out of protective factors. And it's our job as concrete support within our community to help encourage families see the strengths that they're already exhibiting and highlight those and help implement them in other ways in their lives. So, in order to do these everyday actions, CSSP came up with this logic model that you see on your screen. So on the far left, you see a few strategies that they came up with to tackle these everyday actions to concrete support. So we want to link families to services and opportunities. This may look like something different. So depending on the organization that you're with, do you link to other resources within the community? Are you the actual resource for that need that the family is experiencing? We want to observe and respond to early warning signs of child abuse or neglect. So these are the strategies we're approaching concrete support with. Then we go into everyday actions. As I mentioned before, those are 1, 2, 3, and on your screen. And then that leads into the protective factors, which results in strengthened families, optimal child development, reduced likelihood of child abuse and neglect, and I would like to add more confident and prepared caregivers, right? Where I would love to, if I could create some magic pill or medicine that would make all of life stresses and adversity disappear, I would. I would spend my endless amount of time and money on it. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist. If you know of somewhere where that exists, let me know. But unfortunately, life's adversities and stressors are going to continue happening. So we have to prepare our families to be able to handle that when it happens in a successful way and a strengthened way as well. So let's look into how does having concrete support help keep families strong and prevent child abuse and neglect? So let's take a look at that. When we're looking at our family systems and the families that we're helping, we want to make sure that we're paying attention to their well-being, right? So as we're looking at well-being, we can see that it's not just one thing. It's made up of many interconnected parts, like physical, emotional, and social and economic stability. So specifically within a person's well-being and a family's well-being, we have to take into account their economic status, their physical status, their emotional status, social status, and cognitive status. And so while we're doing that, while these areas are very important, we can't talk about well-being without also talking about culture. And so culture shapes how families understand their needs, how they ask for it, and what support feels safe or accessible to them. So we think about supporting families, we have to consider what, not just what we offer, but also how we offer it to them. So culture plays a significant role in how individuals and families experience and often define their well-being. And because of that, our role isn't to expect families to fit perfectly into our services whenever they come into our door, but to stay curious, to build understanding, and to adapt how we support them in ways that are respectful and responsive to their cultural values and lived experiences. So, trying to have that cultural humility when families walk in through the door and understanding them better and taking the time to support them and see what their needs are. So, how do we support these families? So, when we're talking about concrete support, what is our role? So, as a professional working with families, your role is not just to provide referrals to needed services, but also to identify any barriers that families may experience and may have access to those services. So, helping families overcome those barriers is crucial to ensuring that their concrete needs are met. So let's kind of dive into these specific action items and give ourselves some challenge ourselves into thinking how we are providing our services today. So when we talk about action item number 1, that was respond immediately when families are in crisis. So I want to challenge you in asking you, what types of crises or crises situations do families in your program commonly face? And I encourage you to throw these in the chat too, because I want to see I think it's useful for everybody to see what your organization is experiencing, what families in our community are experiencing, especially for providers like myself who aren't in direct services. I always love to know what our community is experiencing in any ways that I can help. So, paying for rent, poverty, clothing, language barriers, food insecurity, absolutely. And so, what skills and strengths do you demonstrate when working with families in crisis? And how are you aware that a family is in crisis? And what clues might you look for? So, these are just a few questions to challenge you to thinking about how you're responding immediately when families are in crisis. And I do have some tools coming up here in just a little bit to be able to work through those tools and work through how are we providing the services and how are we doing as a concrete support to our community. So let's dive into action item number 2, which is provide information and connection to other services in the community. So you might be saying, Casey, my job is just working and I really only have the mental capability, the funding, the whatever it may be to help in this moment in the way that I can. Absolutely 100%. But we as a society and as a community want to make sure that if we maybe don't have the information to help a family in that moment with a need that they have, who are we connecting them to? How are they going to be able to receive that service? And so, a few questions to ask in order to provide action to this action item is what resources are available for common crisis situations? How are families made aware of these resources offered through your organization and your agency? Do they know all of your possibilities that you can help them with? And also, how do you ensure ease of access to resources? When was the last time you personally tried to access a service that you recommended to families? And so I have some challenging items for you here in just a little bit that we're going to be talking through. Let's dive into action item number 3, which is help families to develop skills and tools they need to identify their needs and connect to concrete supports. So, a few questions we can ask and a few ways we can challenge ourselves into helping families to develop these skills and look for tools that help them identify their own needs are encouraging helping help seeking behavior. So, are they there? Are they attending your meetings? Have they called for resources? Working with families to understand their past experiences with service systems that they've had before. And so, just making sure that we are being conscious when we're thinking about that. I also want to mention too, I see Jennifer, thank you so much for dropping the link to our handout. I do have a fillable handout for you available in that Jennifer has dropped. Now, you'll see these numbers in the top right of your screen. I did forget to mention those. That is correlating to the handout that the link that Jennifer has dropped. So these are just ways for you to fill in to answer your own organization's needs, to challenge yourself. And speaking of that handout, one thing I want to talk about is tools that we're looking at. So I mentioned on action item number 2 here, we want to provide information and connect to other services in our community. So I challenge you through our concrete support worksheet. Of course, this is in page number 5 of that link that Jennifer dropped in the chat. What are 3 common needs or challenges of the families that you partner with? So, for example, you would say, you guys even mentioned it in the chat, if food insecurity, if they need helping with housing or bills, what are the challenges that your family is experiencing? And keeping that in that far left column, what are the recommendations for that need that they're experiencing would go in the center column. And then on the far left would be, or far right would be contact information. So this is just a tool for you to be able to use. Not only is it a wonderful tool for you as maybe in your role every single day, but please share it with your organization. This is a wonderful tool to be used in your onboarding process. If you have new employees joining your team, they can take a look at this sheet and say, okay, these are we're not walking into it blind. These are the common challenges of the families that we see that come in through our door. Here's what we typically recommend to these families. So that way they have some basis information to work off of as well. And not only that, but it's also a great document to do some reflecting on. So, do you have a service or a need that you don't have a resource for? Has your team at a team meeting maybe fill out this fill this out themselves. Maybe they are seeing some needs that maybe you don't possibly have right now, or maybe you're coming in and seeing some common needs that maybe your organization can't necessarily help them with at the time, and thinks through who can we connect them with to fill this gap. So, in order to make sure that we are holding ourselves accountable to having updated and well-informed referrals and resources, here is another tool for you. So this is a worksheet for you to take. We're talking about some common challenges, the recommended resources. So this is for you to use internally. This is designed to help your organization to track resources that you recommend to families facing common challenges in your community. This worksheet really helps give you the opportunity to insert quality assurance into your program. So I just want to make sure that we're taking a look at the resources that we're offering to families. When was the last time you tried to call them? When was the last time that you checked and said, okay, whenever you call this number, Jenny's going to answer. They are the receptionist at this area, or maybe you have to press number 2 to go to the Spanish line. So we want to make sure that we're building anticipatory guidance into our services so that way families know what to expect because it helps them be successful in moving forward with the recommendations that we give them. So, with that being said, we've kind of done a quick review of what concrete support is as a protective factor, a few action items we can take away from it, and I've given you some tools to take with you. So I encourage you to take these with you, take them to a team meeting, take them to your strategic planning or program evaluation meetings, and really dive into them to assess how your organization is really baking this into your process. And we also want to go into the big picture, right? So, in order to be a stronger community, we have to collaborate. And one way to ensure that we are connecting with all those resources across our community is by reaching out to those organizations around us. So, I definitely want to highlight that you all support parents and caregivers in your everyday work, and supporting them through concrete support is a multi-generational approach, right? We see that some families that are coming in to help their children maybe didn't get that same experience when they were children, or maybe they don't know how or what concrete support is, what this process would look like. So we want to make sure that when we're doing this, our mindset is zooming out a little bit and imagining the families that we're serving. And we want to make sure that we're collaborating between agencies to build a family's strength and well-being. And so the way that we collaborate between agencies plays a significant role in a family's success and the way that they will handle stress and adversity moving forward. And so, speaking of big picture, and when we're talking about connecting to our community, I want to make sure if you are a family resource center here, I know I've mentioned a few times that maybe your organization has one specific need. We want to make sure that we are connecting them to our family resource center. So if you're a family resource center, I would love for you to put that in the chat. If you are not, that's okay. I encourage you to reach out to your local family resource center near you to help make connections to maybe gaps in your resources that you can offer for families. And with that being said, and talking about connecting to family resource centers, I will turn it over to Michael Williams from the CAP Center.
Thanks, Casey. So we'll go to the next slide. So hi, I'm Michael Williams. I'm the Senior Policy Analyst at the Child Abuse Prevention Center. We are a statewide and local Sacramento organization that provides a combination of direct supports, training, and as well as statewide network building. We're a partner for the Strategies Technical Assistance Program, and most relevant to this conversation, we support the statewide network of family resource centers, the California Family Resource Association. And we will go to the next slide. So actually, maybe get a quick poll versus thumbs up. So, well, versus the emojis. So if you work at a family resource center or family resource network, you can give a thumbs up. If you don't know if if your organization is a family resource center, you can give the surprised face emoji. And if you support family resource centers As a funder or a network backbone, you can give the heart emoji. Okay, this is a good way to do a survey. And I know many of you also partner with family resource centers. So in saying what is a family resource center, I'm going to share some resources that have offered definitions. There has been a saying in the field that if you've seen one family resource center, you've seen one family resource center. And that's mostly true because they're so adaptive to their local environments. But there are consistent things we can say about them. And so uh, we'll go into those, but with the caveat that for those, especially those of you with the surprise face, aside from being a member of California Family Resource Center, and you don't have to necessarily meet this definition to be a member, there is no outside sanction or blessing or good housekeeping seal that says you're a family resource center. There are standards for family strengthening and support that you can connect to through CFRA and through Strategies Technical Assistance. And when we get into state definitions, there is a specific definition that if as there become funding opportunities does get more specific. But in your community, you may see organizations that are operating as family resource centers, and they should get credit for doing that. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. So Vehicles for Change Volume 2. In 2000, there was a monograph sponsored by the Office of Child Abuse Prevention and Cal Foundation, Vehicles for Change, that described family resource centers and described the field. And then in 2018, Judy Sherman and Yvonne McQuaid, also with support from OCAP and the Cal Foundation, did a new survey of family resource centers and came up with some defining elements. And in looking at these defining elements, you may see kind of strands and through lines from what we heard from Casey about the protective factors. And many family resource centers, if not most, if not almost all, really use the frame of the protective factors in their support for families. And to our topic today in terms of concrete supports, we'll talk about the concrete supports that family resource centers do, and it's always in the context of all of this rich holistic support and rich holistic presence in the community. So in family resource centers, Vehicles for Change Volume 2, the key elements describing family resource centers were welcoming environment, family-centered and family strengthening, embedded in the community, culturally sensitive and collaborative. They have an angle of community transformation, reciprocity, and typo asset development. And they're impact-driven and evidence-informed. And in the next slide, but actually before next slide, I want to kind of call out where I get my pictures. And this is actually from my neighbor, the Folsom Cordova Community Center. We have just so many great service providers around the state that I want to call out as much as I can. And this is from Shields for Families. And this is a little bit of what family resource centers do. Well-being services, and that's where the concrete needs come in, but also crisis supports. And then again, those concrete needs, and often families come through the door wanting support with the concrete needs, and they're not just connected to concrete supplies or money, but the whole range of actions that Casey described, as well as referrals, supports, growth and development, parent education playgroups, job training. Again, that's skill building around developing concrete supports. And then broader connection in the community, civic engagement, leadership development, community events, peer supports. I didn't list that here, but that is a huge part of family resource centers. And then they could be part of the larger community development that family resource centers take leadership in. Next slide. So in 2019, the CAP Center and allied organizations were able to pass Senate Bill 436 that created a state definition for family resource centers. And the reason to do that is to enable, you can't have state funding for things that there's not a state definition. And I'm just going to call out just what's in highlights here. I won't read the whole thing. It'll be in your resources. But you'll see a lot of the strands from Vehicles for Change. It really was formative in creating the policy of what is a family resource center, and including preventing child abuse and neglect. Uh, so this, calling out this picture, this is kind of before historic and current day pictures of Good Samaritan Resource Center in San Francisco, to show how far back the history goes. The history of family resource centers go back to settlement houses of over 100 years ago, supporting families and carry on that tradition. And so we see our policy gains in the continuity of that history. And next slide. Last year, family resource centers got defined in federal statute in the Supporting America's Children and Families Act. Thanks for the link. And it added some elements that were not in our state definition, including calling out that a family resource center is a hub of support services for families, that services are at no or low cost, and as I said, connect families to peer supports. One of the resources, another resource we have is a link to current legislation that's proposed to align the state definition with the federal definition, Senate Bill 557. And so you can see elements of both of these in that if you want to really kind of get into the text. So that's the definition of family resource centers. That's the progress we've made in terms of getting this defined in policy. So what do family resource, well, actually, next slide. Let's talk about the extended family resource centers in California. How many family resource centers are there in California? That's a great question because so many people do the work that we've just described, and you may be one of those surprise face, I don't know. But we have some consistent numbers that have come across in our work. In the California Family Resource Association, there are 95 organizations that are members, and they represent around 250 FRCs. Some operate multiple FRCs, or some are networks that coordinate multiple FRCs. One thing that the state definition, SB 436, allowed us to do is to with OCAP distribute COVID relief funds through family resource centers. And so this was an opportunity where you got money if you define yourself as a family resource center. So it's a good motivator to show up and establish that. And so we verified that 98 organizations operating or representing around 386 family resource centers in the state. And that was consistent last year. We'll speak more about this in a little bit. We did a landscape survey that get 95 responses, and we can click out to the rest. There may be more that we don't know about, and there are organizations that again do these functions that don't call themselves family resource centers, particularly tribes and tribal organizations, Indian health centers, churches and church organizations, grassroots and mutual aid supports, and I'll also call out child care resource and referral organizations often play this role in their community. One positive is many family resource centers are at that nexus of being a nonprofit, pulling in resources into their community, but also providing supports to a lot of these grassroots efforts or helping initiate some of these grassroots efforts. So there's a little bit of a fuzzy boundary, but it looks like maybe 400 to 500 family resource centers in California. It might be a good guess. Okay, next slide. So in talking about concrete supports and concrete needs, that was a huge theme a couple years ago. We had the privilege of traveling around the state to visit family resource centers and pull together conversations. This one in the picture is at the Pasadena-Altadena Coalition of Transformative Leaders down in Pasadena, who are our first and bravest hosts. And I believe that's their director in the picture, but I could be wrong. Yolande Trevino. But we traveled to 6 locations around the state and had conversations about what are the needs in your community, what are the needs for family resource centers, what is the work you're doing, and what should we be thinking about for our policy priorities at the CAP Center and CFRA. And so on the next slide is some of what came out of the conversation. And so the highlighted items really reflect what you all put in chat just a little bit ago with Casey. Housing insecurity, transportation, access to quality childcare, and cost of inflation were in almost all of the conversations. Many also talked about food security and healthcare access. So again, an echoing of the needs you're seeing and the conversations at our family resource centers. Uh, Next slide. We followed that up with a landscape survey of family resource centers to find out what services they provide. I know this is tiny. You can magnify it when you use your downloaded one, but if you look closely, the third item, all of them provide information referral. And again, that can be that second step that Casey talked about in connecting people to resources. But 65 of the 95 said concrete support specifically. Um, the picture here is again Shields for Families. It could be Compass Family Services. We had the privilege of visiting there, and I know you have a room like that there. And that's one of our upcoming panelists. But also you'll see things like connection to Medi-Cal, co-location of external resources, financial education, connection to CalWorks, nutrition program, especially the WIC program, health screenings, on-site childcare, earned income tax credit, children's health insurance program, asset building activities, community gardens, workforce development, medical care, dental services. All of these are concrete supports the Family Resource Centers are providing. And again, it's not just that, it connects the families to that whole rich peer support, parenting supports, and community building and connection to some of those grassroots supports. So that's kind of the flow with Family Resource Centers and the benefit of this holistic, community-based support for the work. Okay, and next slide. This is us out at Jefferson Community Center. And this is a quote from a parent. Yes, family resource centers do address housing needs and often partner with organizations around housing needs. And housing came out in our town halls repeatedly as we went around the state. So this family, you can see the concrete supports that they're connected to, clothes from the clothes closet, new backpacks for school, and all of the things they needed to have supports to move forward. But the opening of the quote is one of the reasons we chose it, which is that it's not to mention the families I've gotten to network with by being here. It's a huge impact. That is part of the support that Family Resource Centers and the richness of Family Resource Centers. It's the concrete supports connected to the peer supports, connected to the community supports like housing assistance. And next slide. And that's what I'll share around Family Resource Centers. I'm looking forward to our panel. I know, as I said, Compass Family Services is a member in a member network of CFRA, and I know our other panelists also partner with Family Resource Centers. So I'm excited to hear that next.
Thank you. Quick question. There was a question in the pod, and I'm not sure if there's an answer for this, but is there a minimum population for a community to qualify for an FRC? And this is from a participant who lives in a frontier rural area.
That's a great question. So there's not an external source that gets to say you get to have an FRC. And many rural communities do have them, very frontier rural communities. Many, oftentimes they're a grassroots effort that connects to a larger network in their county. I'm thinking specifically of the Humboldt Network of Family Resource Centers and the Mendocino Family Network of Family Resource Centers are two really good examples of smaller communities getting together to make resources available. It really is, many of them are started on a grassroots level, started by local charities or started by local funders. And so it's a matter of your local community making the case and pulling together the resources. I don't know if that helped.
Thank you so much. Great. And so what we'd like to do now, and by the way, can we give it up for Michael Williams, please? Your virtual applause. We're so grateful. And also Casey giving us the overview of the protective factors. What we'd like to do now is introduce some panelists to bring into a concrete supports discussion. I'm so excited to co-lead this or co-moderate this discussion with Hillary Conrad. We have a few questions for the panelists, and Hillary is going to introduce them.
Hi, welcome back. So we have panelists from Compass Family Services. Erica Kish is here with us today, the CEO. Thank you for being here. We have Sarah Hartman, who actually has a OCAP grant, which is Road to Resilience from First Five YOLO. So excited to have her here today as well. And then we also have two panelists representing Promise Neighborhoods, Edgar Chavez and Jillian Spindle. So thank you all for being here today. Just want to start off with having each of you introduce yourselves and say a little bit about your organization and how your work contributes to building strong families and safe futures through connecting families to concrete supports, and which supports you've noticed are most effective. And Erica, I will pass it to you to kick us off.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Hillary. So I'm Erica Kish. I'm the CEO at Compass Family Services, which is a nonprofit here in San Francisco. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and have dedicated my career to working with children and families, particularly in housing and homelessness. And I've actually been leading Compass for almost 32 years. And I wish I could say that I've seen things get better and better, but in fact, it's the opposite. And what we're dealing with now is as hard as it's ever been. So Compass was founded over 100 years ago, and our focus has been on family homelessness since the mid-90s, when homelessness was becoming a big issue in San Francisco and across the nation. Our target population is families that are homeless or at risk in San Francisco, but it's not uncommon that we house families far afield in other parts of the Bay Area where housing is a lot more affordable. And our goals are to help families with housing stability, economic self-sufficiency, and well-being. And we have the largest and broadest continuum of services for that population here in San Francisco. So we do everything from front door services, shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, early childhood education. We have a robust behavioral health services program, workforce services, and we run one of two family resource centers in San Francisco that specifically targets families that are homeless. We also have a number of projects that we really try to leverage private funds, because we have a bad homelessness problem and housing shortage in San Francisco, but it's also a very wealthy community. So we have a guaranteed basic income pilot that we've been running the last couple of years that's funded by Google. We are working on a family homeless prevention pilot to improve the prevention efforts in the city, because, you know, we all know that we'd much rather keep a family from becoming homeless than try to solve their homelessness with them once it's too late, because that is so much more difficult and so much more expensive. We also have a strong policy and advocacy arm and are very active in that world. And unfortunately, this year we're on track to serve more than 12,000 parents and children. I'm proud of that, but also horrified by that. It seems like the last couple of years, the number of families we're serving has gone up really significantly each year. And 96% of the families we serve are BIPOC. So we believe that housing is the solution to homelessness, but we also recognize that many, if not most of the families we serve have a lot of other challenges. Our society pretty much sets them up for those challenges, and so need a lot of other supports beyond the lease and the key. And we typically, a family that is in one Compass program is in another Compass program or multiple, because there's no point, you know, for example, in providing really high quality early childhood education to a 3-year-old if their family is sleeping in their car or at risk. So we really tried to make sure that we're addressing all of the needs for families. And, we try to be flexible, adapt to the changing needs of families. Over the past year or so, a big focus has been on helping to support and protect families that are at risk because of the regime that we're living under. Families that are targeted or for their immigration status or by virtue of what they look like. So a lot of resources have gone into supporting that population. And yeah, that's us, and that's what we do.
Thanks, Erica, for being here. And it sounds to me that you really have a holistic approach and almost even a wraparound services and care coordination, which is really great to hear. Sarah, love to hear from you next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Hartman, and I am the Systems Integration and Implementation Officer with First Five YOLO. First Five YOLO is a public agency that serves families with children 0 to 5. So we serve all of YOLO County with families with young children. And as Hillary mentioned earlier, I oversee our OCAP funded initiative, Welcome Baby Road to Resilience. And Welcome Baby Road to Resilience is a county-wide home visiting program. It serves families that are pregnant, postpartum, and also in early childhood. The services are that families can get navigation, which includes a needs assessment and also referrals to family resource centers, community agencies. So that's sort of an immediate assessment of need and connecting families to those agencies, and really that navigation as well. So not just a referral, not just a phone number for families to call. It's helping families navigate systems so that they can get connected to services in a really timely manner that best fits their needs. And so then we also provide a nurse visit postpartum. So we have nurses go out and visit the family in their home. They do a mother infant health checks. They are also doing mental health screenings and providing resources in that visit. So they give families a postpartum kit that we've created, which includes diapers, wipes, some baby clothes, a thermometer, and they also check to see if the family needs anything in addition to that. So, for example, if they go out and they find that the family doesn't have a safe place for the baby to sleep, they can provide additional supplies like pack and plays. And they are also doing lots of connections to community and health resources during that visit. That's, extremely timely after just having a baby. And then if families are in need of greater support, if they have certain risks, we do have a substance use population. They are eligible for longer term home visiting in our program. So they are connected with parent coaches and can receive home visiting through the years of early childhood. So that's kind of the summary of Welcome Baby Road to Resilience, and really doing a lot of very timely connection to concrete supports. I think that's one of the highlights is we need to, be able to provide those supports in very vulnerable times of need, especially if we're thinking about postpartum. Families need access to food, formula if they need it, breastfeeding support, diapers, wipes, and that all has to be really immediate. So that's something that is a core part of our program, is getting support for families early before a crisis happens.
Thanks, Sarah, so much. And thanks for being here. It sounds like very focused on meeting families with what they need when they need it is really important, especially for that particular population. Next, Jillian, we'd love to hear from you, and then Edgar.
Hi, I'm Jillian Spindle. I'm the Chief Strategy and Advancement Officer at the Mission Economic Development Agency in San Francisco. And META is a 53-year-old nonprofit organization that focuses on We serve everyone. We specialize in serving the Latino and Spanish-speaking community in San Francisco and throughout the Bay Area in many ways as people come to San Francisco for services. So our core work is around asset building, financial capability, housing, really all things related to economic stability. And about 13 years ago, we became the lead agency, backbone agency for Mission Promise Neighborhood. And we were one of the original federally funded grantees through the Department of Education to create a very ambitious cradle to career strategy in the Mission District that partnered with the city, with nonprofit partners, with San Francisco Unified School District. And the goal was to create a comprehensive cradle to college to career network of services in the community that was very data driven, very outcomes focused, and modeled after the very successful Harlem Children's Zone in New York. So this is work we've been implementing for over a decade, and we've had a lot of success with it as far as providing critical supports to families. Some of the most successful ones that we've seen have been in the realm of income supports in the form of either better jobs, access to public benefits, and then of course, as Erica mentioned, we're in the same city. We're actually partnering on some housing initiatives now. Housing is just one of the most significant and present issues in our community. So we tackled housing as an issue about a decade ago, and part of our strategy was actually to contribute to the affordable housing stock by becoming a developer. And so now we have a pretty comprehensive pipeline of helping families with everything from referrals for emergency housing to placement in below market rate rental units to below market rate homeownership, both in buildings Meta owns and also throughout San Francisco.
Thanks, Jillian, and thanks for being here. And Edgar, you do similar work, but not exactly the same. So love to hear from you as well.
Thank you. Yes, Edgar Chow is Executive Director, and Jillian set us up. We employ a very similar model to Mission Promise Neighborhoods, and we're going to reach our 15th anniversary as a Promise Neighborhood initiative in our community. And we're unique in that we're actually located, or our lead agency is Cal State University East Bay, and so we're sort of through that lens, right? Our work has really evolved to really see sort of the through lines in education for both children and caregivers. And so what we started in investing in one neighborhood, the Jackson Triangle, and we saw the need sort of grow as families started seeing other pockets of neighborhoods needing the same types of wraparound services. And so our model implements really concrete supports from prenatal to career as shared. And I think we even have someone on our call from the public health department that we partner with to provide those services. One of the challenges we have been really addressing and really focusing our work around are really supporting students who are furthest from opportunity. And those are our chronically absent children, our students who are behind credits in school, realizing that these students have other needs at home. And for example, our students who we would want them to be in internships or after school program actually have to be caregivers for their younger siblings, and then parents who are working multiple jobs. And so what we've done recently is really build a referral system as federal funding has sunsetted for us around more coordinated infrastructure and having a common community hub at our local library where all our agencies can still come together and provide those wraparound resources for the whole family. As a student enters through a program, the whole family is also getting connected with other services. So I'll end there.
Thanks so much, Edgar, and thanks for being here. And once again, I'm hearing wraparound services, I'm hearing hub of community supports, I'm hearing prioritizing particular populations, that there's some similarities between all the work here, and of course, the importance of concrete supports. I'll pass it to Jess.
Thank you. I am excited to ask this question to the panelists. And I can read it twice. Actually, I might drop it into the chat as well because it is a little bit of a longer question. The question is, many families encounter barriers when seeking help. What approaches, especially culturally appropriate approaches, help you ensure that every family, especially those experiencing stress or crisis, can easily access supports that strengthen them? Do I have a taker?
Yeah, I can start.
Thanks, Jillian.
Yeah, so when we were designing Mission Promise Neighborhood, one of the challenges we were discussing was we were creating this network-wide system, but we realized that we needed individuals who could serve as those front-facing people who could be those connectors to all of the services and resources within that system. So we developed a role called the Family Success Coach, and our coaches are housed in public schools and in some early learning centers. And they become part of the school family, part of the school environment. But they're really there for the parents, right? And so they're there to provide support to families in crisis situations and otherwise to help them navigate these different benefits and services that might help them. Some of those, everything from public benefits to housing, legal services, food banks, emergency shelters, health, insurance, mental health, rental subsidies. So really, just trying to having an entry point that I think one piece of it is being in a familiar, comfortable environment. People bring their children to school and that's a safe place. And then also having their entry point be whatever their entry point is. So our coaches are very versatile and they're trained to help them enter from a variety of starting points. And then they work with the family on a plan. And so, we've had folks who might come in starting with emergency shelter and end up getting a better job and end up in one of our permanently affordable below market rate housing units, right? And having a safe permanent rental unit. So that's just one example. It's really important for us that we hire coaches who are bilingual. A lot of our families are Spanish speaking, so that's very important. And also having lived experience that's similar to the families that we're serving to also help create that safe space. Um, they support them step by step in navigating. As we know, a lot of applications for these different benefits and services can be confusing. And so the other piece of that is creating a really strong referral system with partners. And I know you shared the worksheet and so forth, and we did a lot of work at the get-go to establish a referral system using Salesforce. And not only that, we have network partner meetings so that people know each other. And our goal is to the extent possible, it's not always perfect, but to have that warm handoff so that when you're referring someone out, you can follow up and know that that referral was received and the family was actually able to access those services. These are also long-term relationships. So a coach works with a family over multiple years, really for as long as that relationship is needed. So that's something that we've done that's been successful in being able to overcome the barriers and also create a safe space and culturally appropriate environment.
Thank you. Some things I want to highlight for our participants that are listening, just to call out. You mentioned that every entry point is just the entry point, which kind of really it reinforces that no wrong door that we hear so much. You also talked about hiring staff that help meet the needs, um, tailored needs really of your target population. So you're looking for bilingual coaches because your population is speaking Spanish. I think that's a great call out. And lastly, you talked about a warm handoff. Um, in the area of concrete supports, warm handoffs can really make a difference. So I would encourage for folks on the line that do make referrals, I would encourage you to think about what does our handoff look like? Is it a warm handoff? Is it an ice cold handoff? If you want a little bit more information about that, I do know that Casey White, who presented on the protective factors, created a warm handoff sheet, actually, that she teaches in CalTrin's protective factor of the month that might be available as well. We might be able to drop some information about that. Wonderful. Do I have any other panelists that wanted to talk a little bit about this?
I'm happy to. So in San Francisco, many years ago, we were the single point of entry for any family facing a housing crisis for shelter and housing and all of that. And As time went on and it took longer and longer for families to actually get housing, the need to surround those families with more services and supports became greater and greater. And then about 8 years ago, San Francisco adopted coordinated entry for families, and hopefully no one from the city's on this, but I will say that the model that was pushed was basically like a little kiosk surrounded by a moat with alligators in it, so that families could come in and maybe do an assessment, but there was no like really encouraging families like this is a place to get support. And we have fought against that for quite some time and are a little bit gratified now that it seems like recommendations for coordinated entry are kind of affirming what we have believed should be the model all along, that one-stop shopping. If a family comes in, these are families in crisis by definition, and we need to provide them with all the support we can, especially since it's going to take some time, quite some time, for them to get the housing that they really need. So we have, that's our Family Resource Center. We have our behavioral health services. When you come to our drop-in center, we have a counselor of the day who, if a family is in a crisis that's kind of heavier than what your average case manager can deal with, can provide support. We provide drop-in childcare so that the kids don't have to be in the room during, the therapy session or the intake session. And I also think we need to go way above and beyond to make families feel welcome and cared for, because that is not the experience they're coming in with. So if you kind of are like doing 100%, that might not be enough, because families expect that they're not going to get their needs met, that they're not going to be respected, that they're not going to be cared for. So like really going above and beyond, making sure you have folks that look like the clients, that speak their language, making sure the decor reflects that. And also, as I shared earlier, trying to make sure that you can meet all the needs, or at least address all the needs. Because if you're addressing one and things are falling apart in another area, that's not totally serving the family. And then these are at this point feel sort of like cliche words, but being trauma informed, being strength based. To me, that strength-based piece where every family, no matter what they walk through the door with, no matter what they look like, in an initial assessment, has strengths that you want to kind of pull out and help them to recognize and to harness, to help them move forward. So, yeah. And also back in the day when we were a bit smaller, we really tried to be like the living room and the extended family for families that don't have that. As we've gotten bigger and bigger, it's more and more challenging, but that still feels like kind of the goal.
That's awesome. Thank you, Erica. I know we're going to pass it off to the next for the next questions, but I just wanted to point out that you really highlight this idea of creating a seamless experience. And, I think about, if you consider the best customer service you've ever received in your life, chances are it wasn't because it was an easy ask that you had. It's because they made it look easy, because they made it seamless for you. They probably did a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that you received a seamless experience. And I think about service to families. It may be the perception of seamless because it's going to take a lot of work on the back end, but how do you create through those warm handoffs, through those, like you said, culturally relevant decor, things like that, that living room feel that you talk about. And lastly, you talked my nerdy language when you said strengths-based. And I like the idea of helping families figure out their strengths, and it starts in the center too. Are you, as a direct service provider, clear on what your strengths are that you bring to the table? Because it is hard to lead people to a place you're not willing to go. So I love that idea as well. Thank you so much. Hillary, do you want to facilitate the next question?
Yes, and I'm going to follow in your footsteps and put the question in the chat as well. And the question is, can you share an example without identifying information of how access to concrete supports helped a family move from crisis towards stability and safety? And Sarah, I'd love to open it up to you.
Thank you, Hillary. One particular example that comes to mind is so in Yolo County, we have both a city population and a rural population. And those two different populations, as you know, have very different needs. And we had a family who was enrolled in Welcome Baby Road to Resilience and was pending a nurse visit. And prior to the nurse visit, they coordinate with the medical home and look and see if there are any needs as far as medically or any concerns that are noted in their chart. And they, in talking and coordinating with their medical providers, found out that this baby was medically fragile, did have a condition, but was not coming in to any of their appointments, their medical appointments. And the medical providers were strongly considering calling child welfare services for this family. And so the nurse went out there and did a home visit. As I mentioned, we're home visiting service in checking with the family and finding out that they really didn't have any knowledge or access to transportation. So it wasn't that they were ignoring their child's health condition, it was really that they didn't know how they could get there. And so immediately the nurse provided a gas card to make sure that they were able to get transportation, and then also really provided the connection to transportation services and how to use that system in the rural area of our county. And so that's something that I think of as, you know, prevention of potential separation of a child from their family by having a nurse go out there right after they've given birth to be able to make that connection, to advocate for the family, give them the resources so that they could, you know, go to their medical appointments and support the health of their child is a critical way that concrete supports that connection can help families avoid an even bigger crisis and even potential separation.
That engagement was so important to identify what the barrier really was for the reasons of not being able to have their need addressed. So that's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that example. Unbelievable. And that's really complex needs when you have a medically fragile situation. Erica, I'd love to hear from you as well.
Yeah, I have so many examples. Just want to share a couple. And I just think about concrete supports and money go hand in hand. We are very fortunate that we have a very generous donor that has really changed things tremendously for us over the past couple of years. We've been able to create what we call the Compass Family Stability Fund, and it's a flexible fund where we can pretty much do whatever we need and want to improve the stability for a family and to break down barriers that we could never break down before. This is like kind of an extreme example in these extreme times, but early on when things were happening with families being taken, we had a mother and her 5-year-old who went to a court appointment, leaving behind the elderly grandmother, and they were detained. And they were sent to a facility in Texas. And we were able to throw an awful lot of money at this situation and get an attorney in and get representation. And it took over a month, but we were able to basically pay the way to get this family released. And then we flew them back to San Francisco. But like these things, I mean, every day we are spending large amounts of money to get family the representation they need because most of what is free is overwhelmed. So that is one area. And then we really struggle, our early childhood program in the Tenderloin, 45% of the children that we serve have special needs, yet we really struggle to get these kids the services they not only need, but are legally entitled to. And to the point where we were just like, the hell with this, we're hiring our own speech and language pathologist, which we did, but that's an expensive position. but the change that it made so quickly in the children, in the classroom, because if you have kids who can't communicate, verbally, they're going to be communicating other ways, physically, getting attention. So it's made such a difference that we are providing our own speech and language services. We're not able to wait for the school district. Everyone knows those 0 to 5 years are so important, yet these kids are forced to wait and wait and wait. And we've had children who have graduated from their IEPs before even going to kindergarten, thanks to the services they're getting. And they can get them on site. Their parents don't have to pick them up and take them off somewhere else, which often isn't practical for low-income working parents. And it's been a total game changer. And we're trying to get these services kind of more broadly and better distributed across the city.
Erica, thank you so much. And what stood out for me was thinking more innovatively about the services to provide. So thinking of legal services, maybe that's not immediately what we think about of what families need, but how important it can be. And then also the partnerships. Everyone's lifted up that they can't do this on their own or in isolation, how important it is to have strong systems in place because of those collaborative partnerships. So I'm going to toss it to Jess for the next question.
Thank you. This next question, I'm going to drop into the chat as well. Let me just drop it in here. The question is, how can collaboration between CBOs, counties, schools, and other partners strengthen the safety net for families?
I'm happy to answer that. So in Welcome Baby R2R, we partner with lots of different community agencies and healthcare agencies in our county and even beyond our counties and neighboring counties, because we know not everybody gives birth in the county. And so that has been just deeply, deeply important in the services that we provide to families and even how we get referrals. So, for instance, we are partnered with 10 different medical organizations in Yolo County, and Yolo County is fairly small, so we are partnered with pretty much everybody that is serving families. And that has been a safe place, a trusted relationship that has helped families accept our services, for us to get referrals from all these different medical partners, to identify families early so that we are getting connected with them during their pregnancy and while they are receiving services for prenatal care. So that has been great. And then even after they give birth, having those partnerships to be able to connect families back to that concrete support of healthcare, right? A basic need of both your family, your child should be connected to healthcare and receiving that service and that resource. So that has been incredible. And then we work very, very closely with our various FRCs and other agencies. One example being WIC. We are extremely close in our partnership with WIC, serving the same families, and that partnership helps families get connected more quickly. We have a partnership that allows us during the nurse visit to actually bring out WIC supplies. So we worked with them so that we could, since we're seeing the family so quickly after birth, that probably even before their WIC appointment, that we can bring in breastfeeding supplies. And we know how critical that is right after you give birth in those first couple weeks. That's when you're establishing breastfeeding and can be extremely stressful and challenging for families. And so through that partnership, we're able to have those supplies and also get appointments for families sooner if needed, if there's something else going on. And even with our local food bank as well. So through that partnership, we actually advocated for families that have just given birth to qualify for food boxes being dropped off to their home. So previous to that, families that had just given birth were having to go to distribution spots to go pick up their food boxes. But in our partnership with our local food bank, talking about how challenging that is for families after just having a baby or, during pregnancy as well, to go out to a food distribution space and that they were skipping their boxes because they just couldn't make it out there. That advocacy and that partnership led to families getting access to food in their home during one of the most critical periods. So I would say that no agency can do this themselves for sure, that we need these partnerships across diverse agencies in the community to really provide that wraparound support, to provide timely care for families, to break down systems and silos that we have created that have made it so challenging for families to actually get the support that they need. So I think partnerships are absolutely critical to the work that we do, and we can't do it without them.
Sure. And it sounds like you're also speaking to anticipating needs and that kind of that good to great model. How could this be more accessible? What could it look like? That's great. Thank you. I think I'm going to pass it over to Hillary, who's going to move us on to, I believe, our final question.
This is a great segue too, because Edgar, I'd love to hear from you. If you could introduce one new resource or policy change that would dramatically strengthen families, what would it be?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think the when I was thinking about this question, one of the main things that we've learned in our work is around really thinking about the caregiver and the child and the whole family together. And so, really thinking, we call it in some spaces the two-generation approach or the whole family approach. But again, to that point, that no single entry point or program or any one organization can solve all things for all families, really thinking about the family holistically. And one of the things that we've learned in our California Promise Neighborhood Network, we are across the state looking at what are the best practices. So we've developed a toolkit to really understand all those intervention points that can work together, but also that when we do coordinated supports, more our funding is also stretched further. So in our social return on investment study that we did across our state, we found that for every dollar that we invested, we had a $4 return on that investment, right? Because we helped ensure that more kids were on track for college and career, families had access to job opportunities, that we helped reduce the need for health emergencies and all these other crime dropping, all these things that social return on investment tells us. And so what we keep learning, and so that's the one thing we really hope that we really amplify coordination and navigation as an integral part of funding and resources across all our places of work and programs across the state.
Thanks, Edgar, so much for wrapping us up. I think we have enough time to pose a question to the audience, but before Jess does that, I just want to thank all of you for being here and all the great work that you do and lifting up the importance of concrete supports and collaboration and trauma-informed engagement and making that safe space so that families feel that they can come there and get their needs met when they need them met. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I have a lot of questions for the audience. I did want to quickly mention that there was a question in the Q&A pod. Do we want to address that very quickly just to make sure we don't run out of time?
Let's do that.
So the question, this one may be specific to services, but I feel like these are the kinds of common questions that we do receive. Someone said, families have come to us for help in preventing eviction, but we face obstacles in finding resources because the eviction prevention program in our city has many requirements that don't align. And the question is really, how do you connect families with resources that can support them when it may be outside of your scope? Is what the question sounds like to me. Any thoughts from our panelists for folks that are like, I want to be helpful, but I don't know how? Any suggestions on how they might get started?
I can just share, I don't know where the questioner is, but here in San Francisco, our pilot is trying to improve access and delivery of prevention services because the ERAP model is very unwieldy. It's very restrictive and it's incredibly bureaucratic. And we actually modeled our pilot off of Santa Clara, who is doing a lot of really good work in this area. And the idea being to go further upstream because you want to catch families before they're in crisis. And this hub and spoke model, like we're doing it on a much smaller scale. We have, one lead org and then four partners that are representing different populations in the city so that we're able to reach more households. But in Santa Clara, they've got, I don't know, 20 something spokes. So having those services available upstream in all parts of your community, that seems to be the goal. And we are trying to come up with ways, our recommendations that come out of this pilot, which of course we'll be happy to share, should point to strategies to make the process less painful, more user-friendly, less time-consuming, and it just takes so long when families are in crisis, and more flexible.
Thank you, Erica.
Um,
Oh, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to add, I think that's where their role as being an advocate can come in, is that if there are programs in your city or county that are not working for families, is to take that information, to your elected officials, to your government officials, and let them know. And there is more energy and more movement around eviction prevention versus kind of like the stage before somebody gets to an actual eviction notice. But I think without advocates on the ground informing government, informing funders, then we won't be able to get to those solutions. In some cases, we've created our own programs when there was a gap, and that's not always an answer, but I think that's a start, is to just bring that information.
Yeah. And always lead with the fact that prevention is much more cost effective than the alternative. Like that's what should get people focused on it.
Absolutely. I am curious for the audience, and by the way, there is a link in the chat. That link will lead you to the evaluation survey and also the certificate of attendance. When you click that, it will be available after the webinar has closed. I'm just curious for those that are on the line. Tell me one resource that families in your community need access to that you are going to explore further after considering how concrete support is preventative in nature for the families that you are working to support. Is there one service? And here's my next question. This is a bonus extra credit. If you are not in a family resource center that you know of, because you might be, I'm curious, how willing are you to go meet one? I'm telling you right now, if you want to know what a family resource center does, get over there. Take a team field trip if you have to. Diane Storman with the Exceptional Family Resource Center in El Cajon, California, taught me everything I know about family resource centers because she invited us into the office to take a look. So I'd highly recommend to folks on the line, if you haven't been into one, get into one. It'll make so much more sense when you see it. All right, so tell me one. So I see legal services, transportation, wonderful. Perfect. Oh, look at, we have family resource centers in Mecca willing to go and meet them. If you're in Riverside, you better contact Krista. This is great. Well, to help you along, I've dropped into the chat the 3 common needs or resources map that Casey talked about in today's 10-minute protective factor summary. So we have that in there. But again, we are so grateful for those of you that are here on the line talking about prevention, talking about concrete support. Thank you to all the panelists and the presenters today. We are so grateful for you. And to the audience, we invite you to take that survey to get your certificate of attendance, and we hope to see you this time next week, next Wednesday. We'll be talking about self-care tools for high-impact care teams. You can get all that information on the website or in that QR code. Thank you, everybody. We are going to close this meeting in about 60 seconds. So if you have a question, you might as well ask now. We're going to stop the recording. And please grab that evaluation as well, because we're going to close it and it won't be available once the link closes. Thank you, everyone.